Nukuova, Dr. Andreas Tameliala, Chairman for the Center of Public Health Policy and Management, UGM. Good morning, Dr. Andre. And last but not least, Bapak George Iwan Marantika, President of the IABC, who will be our moderator today. My name is Alfred Baparsha. I'm the Executive Director of IABC. Please mute yourself during the session. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so I would encourage you to communicate your questions to the host and wait to be assisted. There will also be a link to get e-certificate at the chat box as we're heading to the Q&A session. Without further ado, I will hand this over to Bapak George Iwan Marantika to commence the session. But George, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arfat, for coming in from the IABC office out of the World Trade Center in Jakarta. My name is George Iwan Marantika. I'm coming out of the lab studio of University of Gadjah Mada School of Medicine, in which today we are discussing a very, very crucial issue in the university realm or in the university sector, in which the Indonesian Australian Business Council, partnering with Western Sydney University and the University of Gadjah Mada School of Medicine, will be conducting. And as we all know, we are in the era of COVID-19. And so as many leaders, and this is basically what this forum is, the participants here are university leaders and people who make decisions for universities. As university leaders ponder the question in this era of COVID-19 in Shakespearean tradition. Woe is me, woe is me. What about our university? To be or not to be, what is the fate of the university? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the issue of this virtual dialogue today. And as Pa Afard has shared with us, we have a very distinguished speakers to discuss this issue. This is an intellectual tradition. This isn't a free flow discussion. It's an open discussion in which it will be a precursor to many, many thinking and ideas that will be coming out of the Great Reset of COVID-19 in the higher education sector. And so with that, the Indonesian Australian Business Council is honored to have within our board of advisors the representative of the Australian Embassy. We have with us here today Todd Diaz, Councillor Todd Diaz from the Australian Embassy in Jakarta. And with that, I'd like the Councillor of the Australian Embassy from Jakarta, Mr. Todd Diaz, to be able to provide opening remarks to open this dialogue. Please, Pak Todd, this Zoom room is yours.
Thank you very much, George. It's a pleasure to be here. Selamat pagi for those of you in Indonesia, and selamat siang if you're joining us from Australia. I'm really delighted to be part of the board of IABC as an advisor and really pleased to be joining you today. But George, I didn't know you would be quoting Shakespeare. So if I'd known that, I would have prepared perhaps a few quotes of my own. But the fate of the university, it seems quite dire. Hopefully we'll have some positive interventions this morning. I'll keep my remarks relatively brief, but starting off on a positive note, it's really true that education is central to the bilateral relationship between Australia and Indonesia. And over the time that I've been working on Australia-Indonesia relations, it's really noticeable how that education relationship has grown. As George said, I'm the head of the economic trade and investment team in the embassy, which means that I don't necessarily quote Shakespeare, but I do like statistics. And the statistic I have for you today is that education is actually the #1 export from Australia to Indonesia. And the latest statistics that we have are for the financial year in Australia. So that's 2019-2020, so up to the end of June 2020. And education accounted for $988 million worth of trade. So that's primarily Indonesian students coming to Australia to study. And interestingly, that number is $45 million higher than the previous financial year. Now, I have to admit, I was scratching my head because, of course, COVID hit us all in 2020. But I guess it makes sense because the majority of students would have already arrived in Australia for the 2020 academic year before border restrictions were in place and shutdown measures were imposed on our societies, both in Indonesia and in Australia. And in fact, I was checking for my education colleagues, and they tell me that almost 14,000 Indonesian students are in Australia. Well, this is a stat from December. So they were in Australia as of December 2020. So it's a huge number of Indonesian students that are currently in country and happily going on with their education experience, which is great. I do fear for this statistic in coming years though, so we'll see how we go with that. But in some other positive news, the other part of the section that I work on is of course trade. And the big part of our 2020 experience was the entry into force of the Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Now, most people think about that in terms of, how much more agricultural product will we send to Indonesia and how many more manufactured goods will come from Indonesia to Australia. But of course, on the services side and on the investment side, it is quite significant. And one of the things that I note is that it really has shone a spotlight on the opportunities for collaboration in the education sector. So we're seeing more and more Australian universities look at opportunities, for example, to open campuses in Indonesia, which hopefully will be made a little bit easier through these reforms in the Omnibus Law on job creation, particularly in areas like special economic zones. But we're also looking at collaborations between universities as well, whether that's not necessarily opening up bricks and mortar campuses, but collaborations across programs and sharing of students. In fact, I understand that there's almost over 300 collaborations between Australian academic institutions and Indonesian academic institutions, which is just terrific. And we absolutely want that to grow. But of course, this webinar is all about the future of universities, as George so dramatically introduced just then, and the fate of universities. And much of that sits around the fate of these campuses, these really big, expensive pieces of infrastructure designed to teach people and let people grow academically. And at the beginning of this year, I had the pleasure of joining an online webinar with some students from the Australian Consortium for In-Country Indonesian Studies. Now, I have to admit that I am extremely biased as someone who's gone through that program several decades ago. And I had the honour of spending a semester of my academic career at UGM. So I'm very pleased that we've been joined by academics from UGM today. I feel like it's my home campus. And this webinar was a group of young Australians who would normally be coming up to Indonesia to do internships. And unfortunately, because of the travel restrictions, they were not able to do that. So they were doing these virtual internships. And we were having a really good discussion about the relationship and what it's like and what we can do to improve it. And one of the things that I mentioned there was that whilst these Zoom rooms, these virtual meetings are really terrific at bringing people together in a very cost-efficient way, and it's very easy to do, we are missing that face-to-face interaction. And as I told that group of Achicha students, my favourite semester of my 5 years at university was the semester that I spent at UGM. That's no disrespect to my campus in Sydney, but it was just so much fun interacting with Indonesian students whilst also learning from the academic side as well. And I really do hope that whatever the future holds for universities, obviously as we go through COVID, but also in the post-COVID world, that face-to-face interaction continues. And whether it's a mix of online learning with face-to-face learning, or as I did some semester exchanges overseas, it really does enrich the student learning. And that's something that I've drawn on throughout my entire career since undertaking my academic studies. And it's really served me well. And I do hope that future generations will have that equal opportunity to build those people-to-people links and really understand a culture. It's not just about the academic learning, it's about the entire culture of what you get. Now, I'm talking about UGM and my experience in Yogyakarta, but that's the same issue as if you were studying in your home university. So those enriching experiences that you have on campus, as opposed to just the learning in the classroom. So, George, I don't want to spend too much time. I know we've got a lot of really interesting speakers. So I'm very interested in hearing what they have to say. But once again, thank you very much for inviting me along. It's a pleasure to be here. And I look forward to hearing some very wise discussions from our colleagues from Western Sydney University. And of course, my favourite university, no offence, James, Universitas Gadjah Mada in Yogyakarta. So thanks, George. With that, I'll pass back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. for those opening remarks. So you're an alumni of University of Gajah Mada. Very good. Alumni here, Dr.
Yeah.
Andre. And so, thank you for those remarks. And as you accurately presented that obviously between Australia and Indonesia, education is a main pillar of the bilateral relations. And we hope one day you'll be able to come back here to Yogyakarta. Yeah. and so thank you, Pak Diaz, representing the Australian Embassy, and thank you for your continuous support and the Australian Embassy support on the IABC. Thank you. And now we have for the next discussion, a very well-known academic and intellectual from Australia, Professor Dr. James Avranitakis. I believe you're probably from Greek heritage. Is that true, Professor James? Yes.
That's correct.
Yes, and Professor James is not just the Pro Vice Chancellor of Western Sydney University, but a very well-known sociologist and an intellectual, and in Australia, especially many times covered by the electronic media, TV media in Australia, and has done a lot of very interesting research, published a book on the future of the university and the citizen scholar, and also has published recently research regarding the impact on COVID-19 and the trust towards experts. So this is a very, very interesting issue, and it's impacted globally, and including here. I'm sitting in the lab, teaching lab of the experts, the public experts, public health experts, actually. We're at the public health school here. So that would be a very interesting finding that you can share with us. But in regards to this, again, Professor James from the Western Sydney University, we thank you for being able to participate in this virtual dialogue. The Zoom room is yours, Professor James.
Thank you very much, George, and thank you for your hard work in bringing together this discussion. Todd, it's wonderful to meet you virtually, and I look forward to hopefully sharing a cup of coffee with you in Jakarta. Professor Dr. Ova and Professor Dr. Andres, I look forward to our discussion. Selamat pagi, everyone in Indonesia. I am going to discuss for about the next 10 minutes. I want to give some broad overview and discussions and ideas, and I'm happy to, during the discussion, get into it deeper. I'm also happy to provide, I have a series of presentations and slides, but I want this to be a discussion rather than using all those, but I'm happy to provide them if anyone is interested. Or expand on any areas that are appropriate. So let me begin by saying that in 2016, so 5 years ago, I gave a presentation on the future of universities. And that presentation was a keynote presentation. It was attended by about 400 people. And when I spoke at that conference, I outlined that universities had 5 specific challenges. The first challenge was decreasing budgets. There was an increasing level of pressure put on them, bigger demands, the need to ensure that they stayed abreast of the latest technologies, and the students demanding value for money. The second challenge was technology. What's the balance between an on a face-to-face or a building campus and a cloud campus? What's the balance? Thirdly, there was the issue of competition, the rise of private providers, and we talked about the rise of organizations such as Google providing training and education. We've seen LinkedIn take on significant sections of the market, and many other providers. And I talked about how this was a trend that was going to continue and challenge universities, especially universities like Western Sydney and other Australian universities, and UGM and others that tried to be full service. that was going to be a problem. The fourth challenge I talked about was the changing nature of trust in our society, and I talked about how we had, with the internet and technologies, the rising levels of misinformation, rumours, and distrust. And the fifth element I talked about was certain global tensions, geopolitical tensions that would impact on our ability and our models to service our communities. And that also changed the expectations of what the role was in universities, in society. So 5 years on, I will say that if I was starting from the beginning, I would probably talk about exactly the same 5 things. The only thing that's really changed has been the impact of a global pandemic. Now, this is in no means an insignificant impact. This is a huge impact. But in many ways, what COVID-19 has done is increased the rate of change, the pace of change that we were being confronting over the last decade, possibly 2 decades, around issues of trust, technology, changing expectations, and pressures on budgets, as governments are less likely to, I suppose, have less money to share amongst all sorts of public goods, including universities. So this is the environment that we're in now. But what COVID has done, as I said, is just sped up that process, just brought it forward. And it's done this in a way that has really taken us, I suppose, in some ways by surprise, but in other ways we adapted very quickly. And just going back to Todd's point, I mean, a year ago, if we were sitting here and I said that virtual internships were going to be popular amongst students, that virtual placements were going to work, we would have all sort of said, oh, it's a good idea, but maybe in 10 years. But that's something that we applied, adopted, and I know at Western Sydney University, those students that have experienced them have spoken incredibly highly about the positive impact. So COVID has had this massive impact on budgets. It's had this massive impact on the way that we're forced to deliver. It's made us think about the relationship between our cloud campuses and our virtual delivery and our physical delivery. But we shouldn't only look at it from a negative perspective. What COVID has shown, and what many of the other challenges universities have shown, and this is my moment of optimism, is that education remains an important social, political, and economic for us, for our countries, for our citizens, for the people, for people in our communities. And universities serve a very, very specific and important function in our society. And so even though universities have been challenged and will continue to be challenged, is my internet okay? Am I getting stable? I'm getting unstable messages here. It's okay, George?
Yeah, you were,
yep,
you were a bit delayed, but
okay,
great.
Now. Great. Yeah, so even though we're facing these challenges, I also would like to talk in an optimistic way. In some ways, what our students have learned and what we've learned is how to work across the world online in teams in real time. And that is not a negative thing. That's an incredibly positive thing. It means that if I want to have a meeting now, I'm much more comfortable having a 2-day workshop in Sydney with someone in Jakarta or Yogyakarta or somewhere else in the world. I don't feel that I have to spend the whole week going back and forth, traveling, making plans and all that. And even though I enjoy that process, it's good to see friends and family and be with people across the world. It's also shown a level of flexibility that I think has been both great for us, and it's also given our students a new level of flexibility. So we shouldn't ever waste a good crisis. And so what I would like to propose are 4 solutions to the challenges. This is the optimism I'm sharing with you is not one that dismisses the challenges. The challenges are real and they're there and we need to respond to. And COVID is not the only challenge. So what do we do? Well, I'd like to propose four alternatives, or four responses. The first is to understand that there is a different social contract between universities and society. What's expected of universities today is much different to what was expected universities a year before the crisis, the pandemic, but also 10 years ago. So one of the things that we really need to do, a part of that social contract, is understand that we need to rebuild trust, or ensure that we have positive trust between us and our communities around us, including governments, decision makers, our students, and the communities. And that means that we need to be better at communicating, at sharing our knowledge, at sharing our ideas. So that's one. The second one is to think about having a listening project. That is, clearly understanding what those expectations are. Different partners, different stakeholders have clear expectations. Now we need to understand those, but not just accept them, need to challenge them. And here's one example. A lot of industries say that they want our students to be job ready. Well, I think our students not only need to be job ready, they need to be career ready. So it's not just about training them for one job, but actually giving them the deep critical thinking skills and soft skills to be able to adapt as industries change, because we know industries are constantly changing. Industries are merging and splitting. New industries are forming. Old industries are withering. So we need our students not to be tied to any one industry, but to have the skills to adapt to that changing environment. Which takes me to the third point, which is that simultaneously universities need to make sure that they look forward into the changing nature of our societies, but also backwards into why universities were formed, the foundations. And this is what George mentioned before about my work on the Citizen Scholar Program. Universities do not only produce high quality scholars, but also citizens with a sense of social responsibility to their communities, to their nations, to their their families and those around them. This is the idea of the citizen scholar, that we need to prepare. We need excellent citizenship as excellent scholarship, as well as a commitment to being citizens. And the fourth one is to make sure that we do get that balance between an online or a virtual environment and face-to-face. Our students want a university experience. While online offers flexibility and in some ways offers many benefits, our students tell us very clearly in all the work that I've done that they still want to gather and have a life-changing experience. They want to meet people from other cultures and understand them. They want to travel to other cultures and be embedded and learn in the way that Todd spoke about. This is important, that we don't get caught up that virtual is the only way. If we do that, then what we do is we will have a lost opportunity to build those friendships, those connections, and those deep-rooted cultural understandings are so fundamental when we look at the future challenges that both our nations face. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening, and I'm happy when the time is right to take any questions and look forward to the discussion. Thank you. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Professor James. Very interesting input that you've shared with us. 5 challenges and 4 responses. Decreasing focus, online, offline, competition, global tension, and the role of the university. Those are the 5 challenges. And the 4 responses, this is very interesting, a different social contract. I think this is something that between Australia and Indonesia, we can begin to explore on the thinking behind what is that social contract of the future. And listening to stakeholders, very, very interesting. Listening to stakeholders, we need to listen more to get it right. And obviously the role of the citizen scholar and blended learning will probably be what you see as the balance, yeah, of what the fate of the university will be. So this is obviously very, very significant input, Professor James. I think this round of discussion will be a beginning of a succession of discussions that the thinking behind all of this between Australia and Indonesia, and obviously yourself coming out of Western Sydney University, and the stakeholders here can begin to then evolve what is the thinking behind that. And so again, Professor James Avranitakis, thank you again for your input. And obviously we will get into a panel discussion with you. And now to get more insight into this issue, we have with us a leading academic from Indonesia, a rising star, if I may say. She is a leader in the field of medicine. Obviously, she is the dean of the School of Medicine of the University of Gadjah Mada, which is one of Indonesia's, if not Indonesia's, most prestigious university. And the School of Medicine is considered one of the leading, if not the leading, School of Medicine in Indonesia. We have with us here today Professor Dr. Ova Emilia. She is not just a medical educator, but a practitioner, and a specialist.
OBGY.
OBGY, yeah, OBGY specialist, yeah, and innovator actually. And so we have her with us today, and we say Ibu Dekan, Madame Dean. And so Madame Dean, please share your thoughts with us on what you see as, due to COVID-19, the fate of the university. Please, Madame Dean, the Zoom room is yours.
Thank you very much, George. It is a pleasure to meet you again in this webinar. And good morning, Professor James Arvanitakis. And also, how are you, Councillor Todd Diaz, sorry. And also Dr. Andreasta. Thank you very much for inviting me for sharing about how we adapt to the COVID. And I'm actually afraid of the title of this discussion, the fate of the university. That's very. Let me share my slide. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, it is visible now.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So the pointers of the my presentation is actually about two things: how the faculty react to the COVID-19 pandemic, and also sharing about the adaptations that we pass through. And as we understand together that what already mentioned by Professor James, that COVID is not a change, but it is a big change that we cannot avoid. So we need to follow and face this change with strategic steps. So we believe that what we change is a process of like aligning people, resources, and culture. And we need a new plan. As we learned from one of the literature that show us that we need to follow, at least this is one of the literature that I refer, that we need to create together about the sense of urgency. This is the first step. And then we reformulate the vision. We have to formulate the visions and also the strategy, and also communicate this new vision to the people, to the faculty, especially. And then we try to remove all the barriers, to enable actions of the whole community in the campus, and also keep monitoring and give evaluation in the short term, so we feel happy what we have already achieved. So not going frustrated with perhaps not everlasting, yeah, COVID pandemic. And then we try to consolidate change and also produce more wins for long-term plan and institute the change in the culture. So the first things that we try to identify and discuss with the people in the campus, with all the staff, is what is our points. So what is the challenge, opportunities, ideas, needs, and what is the next steps? And we found that there are at least several issues that we need to sort out, like we have to take care of the safety first. And we have to give support to everyone in campus and maintain connectedness among students and also the staff and also supporting staff. And we have to keep our learning process continue. At that time, we come to several scenarios. And also, we also thinking about the method of evaluation. And how about the research? How is the continuity to going to the field? And how is the supervision? And how to maintain the quality? And how to recruit the students and also the supporting staff? And issues of many innovation that we need to start to face the new challenge. So as we already discussed before that, we need to formulate new vision. So as early as, I think early April, yeah. So we have a very intensive discussion about the vision and mission that we need to change. So we need to reorient our faculty vision and mission, and we come up with this statement, which give us opportunity, yeah, that the COVID make us and force us to have more online, and this is give us opportunity. So we restate our vision to become an innovative and world-class faculty of medicine. So before we only come up with to become international, yeah, that's already being achieved, but now we want to become a world-class. And the mission is also emphasized of the use of data and knowledge using information technology and our academic health system. This is also one of our unique, yeah, mission, yeah, compared to the other university. And so the next stage, we develop a strategic response, of course, with the stakeholders, yeah, that is collaborate with us. So we define the short-term and the long-term strategy. The short-term strategy is what we call as some innovations to survive. So here we develop plan and also teamwork, yeah, with the faculty or in the university level or with the region in the province, yeah. So we create a teamwork to solve several issues. So like for development of regulation, not only for the faculty, but also the university and also the region, and also develop teams to plan about scenarios for teaching and learning approach, because we have to move on, yeah. And also we have a team for develop plan for research and also for logistics, particularly for personal protective equipment. That is new things that we have to relocate our budget. And for the long-term strategy, we also have to need to design how is the tomorrow's business, yeah, in educations, and how we improve the quality of teaching learning that's already being initiated in the last 12 months, yeah, and then we try to improve it, and how we improve the infrastructures of for the new situations. Yeah. So thanks God that we have the unique department, that is the Department of Medical Educations, that also help us a lot in creating the teaching, learning, and also the new situations of learning in the future. And the other thing we have also to think about further innovation, like, for example, for the infrastructures and also the human resources, which is, I think, would be different from the current situations. So I'm going to share several activities what we have already adapted for in the faculty level. Like for the adaptations of the teaching, for the large and small group teaching, we already moved from for the lecture with a synchronous and recorded lecture. With also we uploaded some required reading, yeah, and we already have also the learning platform, what we call it the GAML, yeah, learning management system. And for the tutorial, we also have several approach with synchronous online discussion and also independent study and asynchronous discussion. Yeah. Also for the practical session that before we think that it is not possible, but we found that video learning and also followed by assignment or quiz is also possible to overcome this problem. For skills training is a bit difficult. Yeah, we try to use the video learning and followed by practice at home, and then submitted the recorded practice via GAML, but that is not replacing the face-to-face session. Yeah, and so we did the evaluations, whether the students happy, the teachers happy with this approach. So we found that there are several strengths that is inflexible and also perhaps more relaxing, and no preparation to go to campus, of course, and more confidence to raise questions because it's yeah, look very near. Yeah, you discuss with someone that is very near, and then documented materials also can be learned later, and this is more I think more yeah, manageable. Yeah, manageable for them. And some area of improvement we found here that we have to reduce the assignment and also reduce the some students feel concentrations, too many distractions. More feedback and interactive session is needed. And also some students feel difficulties for the internet quota. And this is one of the inputs that also give us plan for giving subsidy for internet quota. And also area of improvement is schedule changes. So from that activities, we also have ideas for improvement. Like for example, strengthening asynchronous session, yeah, and how to strengthen the synchronous sessions. So some of ideas that now is already being listed, and now we work on that. Yeah, and other ideas for improvement is also coming with the now we try to combine, yeah, non-virtual with tight COVID protocols, yeah, gradually. So this is also one of the blended learning that we proposed during COVID. Yeah, we also here found that more videos should be produced, and also data analysis, yeah, of all the activities. And we now come up also with the ideas of gamification and also virtual reality-based simulation. Now is working on that. And that is because I think about 20% of our staff are perhaps generation, which is very literate with technology. Yeah, and so we try to relocate our activities and also budget by increasing the grant, yeah, educational grant, which actually we have already started since 2018, but in 2020 we increase it and give enthusiasm for more teachers. So more teachers are involved in this grant, and we also provide some like training, yeah, training for the teachers, yeah, 3 batches for e-learning. So more teachers know and being able to involve in this grant, educational grant. The other budget relocations, we try now to establish several studios. So one of which is now is the moderator is there, yeah, Mr. Marantika, and also the production house, yeah. We renovate the learning resources and innovation development unit, which we found that this is very important for the future. And some other is we also relocate some money for the logistic and internet quota for students, yeah, based on survey that I've already presented. And because not all students are lucky enough to support their internet quota. And the others, problem of distress, anxiety, as we found is increasing. And so we intensify our psychology service with the online service and consultation. And this is not only accessed by our students, but also from other faculty. Yeah. And also, although we are in the online, yeah, approach, and usually students have many extracurricular activities, but students should still did lots of activities, and I think we learn from that. Yeah, we really supporting the students for this, and they from them we learn a lot. The other strategy is faculty from the hospital, with the hospital, which is Sajito Hospital, that is our main teaching hospital. We have a new joint decree, yeah, related with the COVID. And so we also have how the operational standard that's related to the COVID, especially for the clinical education. So as early as 2 weeks after the first case was announced in Indonesia, so we change and mix, yeah, our clinical educations, yeah, and we have the decree and also the joint decree, and we mix the clinical education with various activities like online case discussion, skills demonstrations, and also stimulate new ways of learning, like interactive case management using applications, and using lots of Zoom meeting, yeah, for case discussion, and then student demonstrate with his friend, roommate, family, and also procedural skills drilling. Yeah. So some of the activities are also using face-to-face, yeah. And about the strategy with the university, yeah, faculty and the university, I think the faculty is the backbone of the task force that was established by the university. And here we contribute for improving the health literacy. So this is also initiated by the Faculty of Medicine. We already declared as the health promoting university since 2019. Yeah. And we also contribute in self-screening, hotline, and tracing in the university level, and come up also with lots of health technology innovation and research. Of course, this is not only by the faculty, but also with other faculties in the university. And we come up with many products for the research. Yeah. And also the policy on learning process that keep, I think, revised or adjusted, yeah, depend on the situations. One of the activities that I would like to share, we have what we call it as the community and family healthcare with interprofessional education, which was followed by the medical students. So since 23rd of March, students are actively partnering with their families, yeah, families to improve the the literacy, public literacy for COVID. And this is guided by the educational materials that is put in this website, yeah, HPU UGM ACED. And this is one of our contribution to the community. Also, we provide some website under the HPU and also tropical medicine that can be accessed not only by the students but also by the public. And the other things, we also have experience, yeah, last July, yeah, for the way we recruit our students. This is when we have the interviews, yeah, for the incoming students. And also in orientation, yeah, a new online orientation suite, yeah, of the new students. This is all not only for the faculty, but also in the university-wide. The other things is the strategy that involving how the faculty contribute to the, not only to the university, but also to the government. So we also participate as the member in the province task force and actively contribute for establishing several policy, yeah, regarding the COVID. And also in health promotion, especially for advising for content and also training. And we have a large contribution for diagnostic laboratory in the province and also Central Java, yeah, for Jogja and Central Java, which we contribute the large number. And this is also unique because before our laboratory is only have 2 PCR RT, yeah. One is from the integrated laboratory from the university, and one is from the other lab from Tahia lab. But this become a big laboratory because we also receive several instruments from other from government and also from others, yeah. And so now becoming the large diagnostic laboratory for PCR RT in Jogja and Central Java, southern part, yeah. And the other is contribution in hospital service and also in Sonjo, yeah, in Sonjo. So Sonjo means that we here, this is the what we call it, the community, yeah, the community network, yeah. So this is some of the event, yeah, that we discuss, yeah, for educating people. And this is what we call it, the Sonjo. This is the UGM initiation, yeah, for the network community that help people to overcome many problems, like for getting foods and also getting perhaps as a trader, they have reducing income, and also for hospital for referring patients and looking for the plasma convalescence and etc. Yeah, many things is sort out with this community network with a very nice what you call it logo ora ono senkeri or no one left behind. Of course, during the 1 year, we also have some people. We also have some challenges. Yeah, some people reluctant to change. Yeah, and we understand that this resistance is now. I think the number is decreasing. Yeah, because people now is more realized that the COVID should take perhaps more time, yeah, for that. And so the faculty have to acknowledge about this, that some people perhaps need to more time, yeah, to change. But we have to be very careful not make people that coming to the depression. That when they have frustration, then we need to hurry up with some trial and error, some decision to make the new normal or new things happen. And we also started or focusing from change from the easiest, what we can control and what we can influence. Yeah, not so make everything more doable. Yeah, not only a dream, and also adjust the change according what we face, the people, because we know that the people we face or the working team or the unit under the faculty with different culture. Yeah, so we have to think about this culture dimension. So it is, we learn a lot. It is a complex, and we found that educational organizations have to change. It is not a political arena that should be left or right, and it is not tribes and territories or a jungle, but I think this is an opportunity for change and also to innovate, yeah, which we learned that I think the keywords is networking and collaborations, yeah. And to conclude, I would say that the change is consistently present, but COVID is huge, yeah, disrupt our lives, yeah. And higher educational leader has to be able to frame crisis and change in positive and open way, yeah. And we learned that good and intensive communication is important, and every person adapts to change uniquely. And one thing that we have to understand and see, that situation will not come to normal again. Let us learn together and celebrate success and acknowledge the shift to the new reality. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Ibu Dekan, Madam Dean. That was very insightful and very powerful. So your last statement that we have to face the new reality, and we will not go back to what we think was normal. There is a new normal, and so that is a very powerful statement. And I think from your input, it shows that there is a way, there's a direction on how universities can survive and in fact excel in this new normal, the new normal of the university. So thank you very much, Ibu Dekan. And we're now going to have a conversation, and that conversation will be led by Bapak Dr. Andreas Tameilala. He is a leading public health expert in Indonesia, and he's the chairman of the University of Gadjah Mada's Center for Public Health Policy and Management, one of Indonesia's leading think tanks in the area of public health. And obviously, today, public health is overarching towards everything else. Economists refer to public health. Business, public health. Industry, public health. Education, public health. everything, media, public health, everything is now centered to public health. So public health is front and center. And so with that, I will give Dr. Andreasta Melala the floor to lead the conversation and maybe make some remarks in that matter. Now, I just want to add one thing. I'm in the studio of University of Gajah Mada School of Medicine's studio lab. And so we are appearing in two different screens, but actually he's right beside me. So this is the new reality of virtual reality. Thank you very much, Dr. Andreasta. The floor is yours. And I'd like to make Dr. Andreasta, just to recognize Mr. Phil Turtle, the national president of AIBC is on this Zoom here. And also I noticed Joanne Hashim representing the Victoria government is also here. Thank you. Please, Dr. Andreasta.
Yes, thank you, Pak George. So I think you will lead the conversation, but I just give short remarks with these two distinguished speakers, Professor James and Professor Ova. We can see that one point that really for me is quite interesting is about the changing trust to the source of knowledge, which is university. And Professor Ova has already described what have been done in these schools and how big it was the investment or the next investment would be to create such kind of ecosystem to support the new era of online learning. And then I would like to talk in the perspective of the demand side, the stakeholders or the customers of the university. Do they know about the change that has been doing in this university? Because Professor James mentioned about the new social contract as well. They have a new expectation. They have new perspectives on the education, and also the substitution of the university. They are also coming up. We can see now that everybody can learn from anywhere in the platform, in the internet, web-based learning can be found everywhere and anywhere or anytime. We can search that. And based on that, we can see that the expectation of the people also would be changed. But within this first year, maybe their level of acceptance maybe not as high as maybe on the next 2 or 3 years. Because they can see that their needs may not be fulfilled in the university because of this transition is not really a complete transition into the real online learning system. And we can see that we're still talking about the competency. We're still talking about the learning outcome. We're still talking about the classical curriculum, which is maybe should be redesigned during this online learning system. And we also can see that the learning style of the people might be changed as well. Because they can get another source of information, they can use another tools to develop their own skills, and also they can have another opinion about some information that they have got already. So I think this is the point that we should also discuss about the expectations of the demand side. Because the changing social contract means that everybody will see that maybe, for example, the tuition fee, before they can accept the certain amount of tuition fee because of the investment of the buildings and everything is quite expensive. But now we can use 1 or 2 studios, and we manage the pre-recorded materials. And we can put that on the web, and we don't need that big building anymore. So I think, Pak George, this is the point of the demand side that should be taken into account into this discussion. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you,
So,
George.
thank you. So that is a serious issue, the demand side there.
Yeah.
And if you're a university president, what's ticking in your head right now is, have you overinvested in, you might say, cement and steel, or where is the allocation of the investments of the future? And that relates to what Dr. Andre says, the demand side. And so with that, I want to ask a question before we go to the audience. Yeah. And that is to Professor James and Professor Ofai, because apparently what Professor Ofai has just basically shared with us, and this is coming from a medical one of Indonesia's leading medical experts who is shaping policy in Indonesia. And that is that we're not going back to normal. That's a reality. And so change is the real deal. And the question is, and this is one I want to get a sense out of from Professor Ofai and then Professor James, and then you could provide remarks, Dr. Andre, is that what percentage of the academia in Indonesia, and then for Professor James in Australia, has, in that curve that Professor Ofai has mentioned, accepted reality? What percentage is still in denial, and what percentage has accepted reality and ready to change? And this is a general, yeah. So Professor Ofai, I'm not just indicating from this university here, but generally the landscape, the academic landscape, from your sense, just instinctive wise. Could you give me that percentage? And then Professor James from Australia, please, Professor Ofai.
Thank you, George. I think this is related with the literacy of the technology. When we look at the proportion, perhaps about 20% of our staff are the young staff, and they are very literate, and they are ready for jumping to the new era. And I think about 60% are in the middle. They are followers. They are not resistant to change, but it is difficult for them to initiate the change itself. So they are much more to become a follower. And the rest, about 20%, is perhaps the old one. Yeah, that is difficult, yeah, to accept this new change and keep with their own way. Yeah, that is my answer. That is the best guess.
Okay,
Thank
so
you, George.
20, 60, 20, yeah?
20%,
20%,
yeah.
the millennials, the so-called
Yes.
millennials are multitasking and ready to go.
Yes.
60% will follow the millennials. I guess
Yes.
that's including me.
Yes, yes, including me too.
We'll follow the millennials. And we still probably wish we were a millennial. And then the next 20%, that needs to, they're still in denial, as if you follow that curve that you shared with us. Okay, very good. From Australian perspective, Professor James, what does that landscape look like?
Thank you. Look, I'd like to also say a couple of things. One about the new normal, and I think it's a really important point. But I also, and I totally agree with Professor Ola, but what is also important to recognize is that we've always had a new normal. There's, almost every day we wake up, like I said, every year is a new normal. There's a new government legislation, or there's a new technology, or there's a new expectation, or a new competitor. And so there's never been going back. It's always been one of the challenges that we've had. And so I think that's why I think your question, George, is such a great question, because I think for me, I would say about 25% are very active in changing. Are very much not only want to change, but driving change, attempting to be ahead of the pack. And I think that's important. Probably about 50% sit in the middle that are willing to change. And I would say that a lot of them suffer from change fatigue. So sometimes they will move backwards a bit and want to slow things down. And others within that group are enthusiastic but don't have the confidence or the skills to adapt. And so, but I think, yeah, probably about 50%. And then I'd say about 25% would be your people that are resistant, that their imagination sees one way, the old way. But I think that 25% with COVID has been shaken. You know, I think now that like if we were having a conversation 12 months ago, that 25% was like, you know, the Great Wall. You know, there was no breaking that barrier. But I think COVID has forced even them to adapt. So I think that 25% can change is very vulnerable to resistance. I think they're much more willing to change. And I think, again, this is part of the really positive. I mean, like I said, never waste a good crisis. This crisis has an opportunity to make us reflect on what our practices are. And the last thing I'd like to say about the balance between face-to-face and online is to think about it, the fact that Western Sydney University and other universities describe ourselves as anchor institutions, right? That we're placemakers, we create place. We just don't only provide an education. Now, an anchor institution can provide a very virtual and a very, cloud experience, and that's important. And that remains to be important and will become even more important, especially with new technologies like virtual realities and artificial intelligence and so on. But also I think that a lot of universities like mine and I know others also take pride in creating that place, in being placemakers. And I think that's an experience that I think makes it still very valuable. Having that physical location is very valuable. So for example, this sounds crazy, but at this point we're building a new campus, right? Yeah. And the response from it's going into a place in Western Sydney called Bankstown, in the central business district of Bankstown, and that place has never had a campus there. And what it's doing, it's becoming a beacon for the aspirations of the community, a physical beacon. And I think it's important. That is a very important dimension of being placemakers. And I can sit there and say there's a lot of universities I've visited across the world that have that important dimension of what they do. So it's that balance is one that we shouldn't be too careful to sort of say, oh, well, no more physical buildings, because I still think they're very important.
Well, that is very, very insightful. So Professor Dr. Andre, Professor Ofa gave us an average, of the landscape of Indonesian academia. And then Professor James also gave pretty much similar average. And I think one input from Professor James is the concept of space. I mean, I'm in a university that's like, the whole university is a city, it's a district. And many campuses are, in fact, we are accredited. And this is very key. Our accreditation is based on how much more cement and steel we build. Now, how is that going to realign with what Professor Ofa said about the new reality and change, and what Professor James said about space? And this leads to accreditation. Go ahead, Dr. Andre.
Yes. So I think if the hard structures has changed, then the soft structures also must be changed. So we cannot use the old or classical measurement for the new level of normal. And then we can see that all that instruments to accredit or to assess the university or even the teaching learning process must be changed, because we can see that we are using such kind of technology, and then some academic atmosphere or the psychological contact or physical contact is really decreasing. And then is it also affecting the result of the teaching learning outcome? We never know. So that's why we should change also the way we assess the university.
Yeah, so this is in line with our new Minister of Education, Nadiem Makarim, a 36-year-old young entrepreneur thinking out of the box with Campus Merdeka, because it actually fits with the change, right?
Yeah.
So how do you see that? I mean, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the policy itself it is already trans avant-garde. Yeah, it's already moving forward. But then all the instrument down there in the operational level is still our challenge.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's the guidelines. Yeah.
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 Professor Ofa, what do you think, Professor Ofa? This, because obviously Australia, Indonesia is very connected in terms of the education sector. And in Indonesia, we have a new dynamic with a new minister, young. He's thinking out of the box. He's a technopreneur, built a unicorn. Actually, you fit right for the challenges of this time, which is very, you might say, virtual in terms of its implementation. What do you think, Professor, of Campus Merdeka in COVID-19? Does this fit in terms of the change that we need to make? Go ahead, Professor.
I mean, the Campus Merdeka is, I think, having been running faster with the COVID. Yeah, the acceptance of the Campus Merdeka. So what I mean here is, before we actually already started using the online, yeah, since several years ago. But the move, yeah, the changing is very, very slow. Even, yeah, when we try to involve many speakers from different university and also different countries, using the online is more feasible and it's easier. But with this COVID, then it is realized that everyone is learning that it is much easier. And so now the acceptance of the Campus Merdeka, even for the Faculty of Medicine here, which is not obliged to follow the Campus Merdeka, now is becoming increasing because of the COVID. Yeah. So in fact, that we need, yeah, to combine, to blend, yeah, between the virtual and also the face-to-face. So now it's more easier. I think welcome Campus Merdeka. Yeah, we are all looking forward, yeah, for implementing it. And I think in our university, we also have a new policy about the teaching learning process and also how the achievement of the competence and how the assessment of the competence is set for the new Campus Merdeka. Yeah.
Well,
thank you, Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Well, this is very refreshing because
it's positive.
Yeah, very refreshing, very, very positive. That so
Yeah.
The idea of for our Australian friends, Campus Merdeka is campus independence, and it is a total new thinking of Indonesian higher education. And what Professor Ova is saying is, due to the impact of COVID-19, this is actually accelerate the concept of campus independence. Yeah. So I think that's very refreshing. I think educators, especially in higher education all over Indonesia, which is quite large in terms of a sector, about over 5,000 campuses nationwide. We'll see that as a refreshing thought. And I think together with this new young minister, we should work together and collaborate in creating that new platform of what campus independence or Campus Merdeka will look like. Very good.
Can I give just one example? We just have done about since October that we have electives for the Faculty of Medicine from different Faculty of Medicine, and this is done I think in the first time in Indonesia, and this is because of the COVID and because of Campus Merdeka. So I think it's possible.
Yeah, so it's possible, and it actually, it becomes a positive. Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. So very good. And now I've been asked by our organizers here to go to the audience. Yeah. Before I go to the audience, here we go. We have some questions here. Yeah. Before I go to the audience, though, I think I'll give a shout out to Mr. Phil Turtle, if he's still on the call, the national president of Australia-Indonesia Business Council, our sister organization. Are you still in the call, Phil? Phil, are you? Here you go. There you go, Phil. Hi. coming out of Perth, Australia. So we've got a lot of friends coming out of Australia. Perth, we have Peter Craven, the president of Tasmania, AIBC, also Joanna Hashim from Victoria government. But please, Phil, representing our audience here, maybe give your food for thought here for us, and what you're thinking is behind this very, very, you might say, insightful and high-level conversation in terms of the university and the fate of the university. Please, Phil.
Well, George, thanks for the kind introduction and for having me today on the webinar. I've really enjoyed listening in to all of the very distinguished speakers sharing their thoughts on what the new normal, or the fact that there probably is no new normal confronting us. Very buoyed by the optimism that our speakers have shared. And I've been frantically making notes myself for some of the themes to pursue further. You know, listening to the professor from Western Sydney University talk about his 4 priorities. I really enjoyed his reflections upon what the university mandate is, the important part that plays in society, the concept of student citizenship and those sorts of things. And George, I know that you and I are also on a follow-up webinar on Thursday. So there's been a number of themes and ideas which have been shared today, which I look forward to embracing in that conversation. Also, great to see Todd Diaz from the embassy on the line today. Obviously, they play a really important part. And you also mentioned our very, very dear friend Joanna Hashim from Victorian government, Global Victoria, focusing on education. So again, looking forward to having further conversations with Joanne. Again, no specific reflections other than those from today. A very important conversation. Todd also mentioned those, almost surprisingly, how large education plays a role in the export relationship or the trade relationship with Indonesia, you know, ranking as our #1 export. So still very important amongst all of the important industries in which Australia and Indonesia work together. So, Pope George, thank you very much. You've been a superstar moderator once again today. So I'm in awe, and we'll look forward to picking up some of your tips for future events. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Phil. And I noticed you're coming out of Perth, right?
I am in Perth today. Sorry, I probably should be wearing a mask today, but just for you.
Right. And Curtin and Murdoch are fully online over there. Yeah. Now they've changed their structure. Yeah.
Yes, it seems a lot of the universities have thought that bricks and mortar is not the way for the future. So all online. But again, I was really interested in the Gajah Mada and Western Sydney University reflections upon some of the challenges that moving online, you know, some of the psychological challenges, the things that work well and the things that work less well. So again, it was reflected that COVID-19 has really accelerated our move dramatically into digital and online, and outpaced our capacity for that change, and probably pushed too far with the best of intentions in certain areas. So it'll be really interesting to see how that corrects over coming months. You know, we're still a long way to go before we're out of this COVID situation as well. So, you know, it's a daily journey of discovery.
Yes, the new reality. Thank you, Phil. And let me give a shout out to another participant here, Bu Juan Hashim, yeah, from Victoria Government. Are you still on the call, Bu?
Yep, I'm still on the call.
Very good. So you're in charge of higher education for Victoria, obviously a powerhouse in Australia and education. Maybe your thoughts on this topic today.
Well, it's been a fantastic event. Thank you for sort of setting this up, because I think this is the start of the conversation. And I think this actually starts us looking at different types of models in terms of delivery. We've had, you know, the bricks and mortar, and that has gone well for a significant amount of time, but we do have to change. And I think from this conversation, it's very clear that there is change happening, and it's A, how we embrace it, and B, where we take it. So I really think this has been a really great conversation to have, and I look forward to the one on Thursday. On the Victorian government side, when we talk about sort of, you know, some of the types of delivery, you know, EdTech is also something that's sort of front in mind when we think about how we're going to deliver sort of our courses going forward. But I think also we need to look at sort of, you know, the Campus Merdeka sort of model and where that can also go. So it seems to be that there's lots on the table and lots of conversations to be had going forward. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, I've really, really enjoyed today.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. And obviously, you know, there's going to be a lot of changes. And again, let's all work together, as Professor Ova said. We need to collaborate to be able to define that change of the future. And now we have also from Western Sydney University, is Mr. Ian Sebastian still here on the call? Ian. Okay, is he
but George, I think there is questions on the
Okay.
chat board. Let me read it for Professor Ova.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Andre,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So Professor Ova, one question for you is regarding the length of the study. Can you see the question on the chat board, Professor Ova?
Yeah, I can. Yeah,
Yes.
from Dia Pharmasita. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Yeah, for the length of the study is still the same, remain the same, because we also combine the learning process. So things that can be done online, that it is online, but some of the skills training is still keep face to face, but we rearrange the grouping. So to maintain the safety for the students and also for the instructors. So we can keep the length of the study as similar with the previous period. And also about for the IUP, for the international students. So we don't do the foreign electives, but we did for the last period is like they participate in online electives. So this is also one of the change that we have. So instead of going abroad, they also can do follow the course online, MUUC, but still from the foreign university. So that is one of the requirement that now is finished, yeah, for the last period. Yeah, I think there is no problem with we just have to adjust the process of the studying. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ova. So this is what I really mean about the expectation from the demand side, yeah, because with the online system, everything can be how do you call it?
Crunched.
Yeah, crunched down. Yeah, we can shorten the time, the period of studying and everything. So we should also try to advocate the community that the quality takes time. Yeah, and regardless the technology that we are using, and still we need sometimes, yeah, to produce knowledge, attitude, and practice, particularly the medical school. Yeah, is there any more question in the chat board, please? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's all about George.
Thank you. So about that, on that issue, I'll give it back to Professor James, because this is an interesting issue. Do we really need to study for 3 to 4 years for a bachelor's degree? I mean, if we got this new reality going on, can't we do it like, I mean, as a student, I mean, as a former student, like, again, I wish I was a millennial, but I'm not. But, you know, could you do this thing in 2 years? Or what do you think, Professor James? Obviously,
Yeah,
medical school is a bit different, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think there's two things about that I think are very important. One is the way that knowledge is a building block. So I think 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, that varies, but I think it's the experiences that we have while we're studying. So I think, you know, just 2 years or 3 years of any education system without real experience is not going to give us the answer. This is why I think internships are so important. This is why I think we need to make sure that we we reimagine the way that we deliver it. So one of the things we could think about is, maybe it is 2 years where people spend more time during the holiday break working, or maybe it's the same thing, but 4 years. But what they do is they almost have like a subscription model. They drag down the bits and pieces that they think they need to learn. I mean, this is the thing about education now, that if I taught you a computer program today, in 2 years' time, that program is pointless because the knowledge is changing so quickly. So, so in some ways, the basics don't change. We need to teach those basics. But in other ways, we need to be creative about how we deliver the additional parts. And they could be based on, that doesn't have to be within a 2 or 3 year period. It could almost be as an alumni, like an alumni from my university. Wouldn't it be fantastic if you had, for the next 10 years, access to a whole bunch of knowledge on a subscription model? Say you paid a one-off fee and you could access it as you need it. So that way we're not thinking of that way. What we're doing is we're bringing the idea of lifelong learning to life. We're making it real and tangible. And I think that would be really exciting if we could deliver something like that. If our students, when they graduate and they say they come back to Indonesia, or your students come to Australia, and while they're there, we have an understanding that says, oh, well, because you've paid, it's like Spotify. I want to download that lesson. Or I want to understand this thing. I want to attend this class, and we can continue to download it. So we continue that knowledge journey. So I think that's the real big challenge for us, is how do we deliver this kind of education in these longer term models?
Yeah, very good, Professor. So I guess with Professor James' last comment, that probably will conclude our conversation here today. But I would like to end by giving a round of last remarks. Yeah, last remarks from Professor Ofa on her thoughts regarding this issue, and then maybe this could be a beginning of a collaborative conversation among thought leaders and academics in Australia and Indonesia, and Australia, on how together we can create that new reality in the university sector. Please, Professor Ova.
Yeah, thank you very much, George. I think from the COVID-19, we learned a lot that change is the way ahead, and we need to collaborate together to face the challenge together, and I think to set up a new destiny for all of us. I think that is my close remark.
So let's work together to set up a new destiny for all of us. That's very thoughtful remarks, Professor Ofa. And Professor James, did you want to have any last remarks before we end this, conclude this session?
Look, just to thank you, George, for your efforts. And it was just such a pleasure listening to Professor Ofa and listening to Dr. Andrew's talk. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed it. And I think, as I said, this is a fantastic chance for us to take advantage of those changes and deliver for our students and our nations and our communities the best possible results. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is a beginning of a conversation between Indonesian and Australian academics, thought leaders, and educators on how together we can move forward. And the Indonesian Australian Business Council, together with the Western Sydney University and University of Gadjah Mada, organizing this event with the support of the Australian Embassy in Jakarta. We want to thank everyone here that has joined us to think together and to collaborate together to, as Professor Ofa has just shared with us, establish the new destiny of the university, in which the fate of the university will continue to survive. The university will survive, and that is the fate. But it will survive in a new destiny, in a new reality. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this virtual dialogue, and we hope to see you soon in the next IABC roundtable and connections that we will continue to have. Thank you, and again, thank you, Dr. Andre, for your support and for allowing us to do this in this teaching studio. And thank you, Ian Sebastian from Western Sydney for facilitating this dialogue also. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
And stay safe, stay well. Salam sehat.
Yeah.
Salam sehat. Thank you.
Okay.